going to hear it. It's not like a PA, but that's how that. If I didn't tell you, then I wouldn't be doing my job.
Ooh, there is a sound in the microphone. I'm somewhat of a loss for words, and I'm not a guy that loses words quickly or easily. Marty and I have been friends since we're 9 years old. All the people that are in this room were Marty's great family and great friends. And it's almost impossible for me to describe this human being, this guy. You know, people say when you die, nobody cares how much money you have. You'll be judged by the way you treated people. Well, we know Marty didn't have much money, but the way he treated people was unique. And the word spectacular comes to my mind. He had a very unique way of communicating, you know, that New York arrogance, that confidence, that ponytail, that pinky with the long nail that he ripped all that gold off of. But there was something very special about him because he was a lover of life. And the most important thing I think that he really loved was his family. Marty, as you have, you know, we spoke many, many times, and it was always about his family. Through his ups and his downs, he always tried to take care of his family. You all know that. I mean, very unique man. You know, he never lost sight of Peg. You know, when Cary was in New York, you know, he worried every day. I know because he told me that, even though he didn't probably tell her that, but that was what he did. You know, David, you know, you guys, you know, used to bop into my house delivering art and these big balls and these crazy discs and such. And, you know, you guys were a team. You know, Matt, you were the firstborn. How long do I know you?
37 years.
It's kind of funny because I was talking to Peg and we chatted for a moment, and she immediately brought up and says, "How long do you know me? How long do you know them?" And when Matt was born in that little hospital in Terrytown, I think we were waiting at the house. I know we were stoned, and from the very first time Matt could speak, as well as Cary and as well as David, you know, we'd always say, "Well, how long do I know you?" You know, like I didn't know them before. And so it was just a very unique family. And you know, everybody says that, right? But, you know, I think about some of the memories. You know, I walked into this place and I noticed the white bike. Well, I remember the day we went down to Baltimore to the Harley dealer to pick it up. I think it was, 1984 or so? And it was a crazy time, and all of I was sitting in his office today, you know, looking at a lot of the crazy pictures, you know, the picture of Barry Berkowitz and Jeff, and I took that picture. That's why I wasn't in it. And I think we were going to the Cape or we were going to Maine or something. He always wore that funny Harley hat. He always had that leather shirt, you know, that he wore, and always wore cowboy boots. But to describe, you know, Marty is really impossible. And I think it would be best that we hear from, you know, from you all right now. I know, Jay, you're ready you're always ready. Well, when you were with Marty, you always had to be ready. You know, Marty's favorite thing was, I think his favorite thing, Peg, tell me if I'm wrong, it was to have cocktails at 4:30. No matter where we were, we always had cocktails at 4:30. You know, we started off with Stoli, you know, when Stoli was popular in the freezer, and you know, we shifted over to something else, and Chopin, I think. But he wound up with Kettle One, which is kind of funny because that's my drink, and many other people's drinks. I know I'm rambling because I'm scared right now. The truth of the matter is I'm scared because I just lost my best friend, and I know that you all lost your best friend. Let's take a second and think about that. What does a best friend mean? I think a best friend means that you do anything for them. You have an unconditional love, and you accept them for the way they are. I know that this family has always accepted me for the way I am. And I always loved them for that because I'm crazy. I mean, how could you not be crazy loving this family or this family loving you? You think about some of the crazy times, and we'll talk about those at dinner tonight. We'll toast Marty, and we'll talk about some crazy times that we had. You know, I can tell you times when I saw a guy put a shotgun down his throat. I can tell you a time when we had lobsters falling off of his motorcycle. I could tell you the time we divided up, you know, a couple of $100,000 on a table and walked away from something. And I certainly remember when he first moved here. Remember that, Peg? That was so funny. I was already in Denver, and, you know, you guys were moving out west. So, Jay, come join us, please.
So, you know, you asked me to do this, and the first thing that comes to my mind is, when you're a jet all the way. Oh, when you're a jet all the way. I mean, how many times did he sing that song? I'll never know. And of course, the old, what do you hear, what do you say? So I decided I would talk about us, Marty and I, because as you know, especially during the lounge hours, we were a sight to behold. I met Marty, my in-laws went in, the gallery, the frame place was on 5th Street, and I became part of a trade. Marty comes in, he's got the white bike, the hat, the fringes, the pants rolled up, and we became instant friends for years and years after that. The Gold Leaf Lounge that opened at 4:30 in the afternoon, that I was a very card-holding member of, and you never knew who you're going to meet. You could meet the president of a bank, you could meet a famous artist, a gallerist, or the UPS girl that he's touring around the factory. Yes, oh, we make this here, we make this here, and he takes them on a tour all over the place. So Marty and I are going to El Gancho. In those days, we were Adonises, you know, and we would steam. It's 3-4 times a week, and we would steam. And we'd sit in the schwitz, and we'd talk. And being of our faith makes you a professional complainer. And we were really good at it. We could solve all the problems of the world, little sweat, a shower, and life went on. So Marty gets a contract from a frame manufacturer in New York, and they send him to obscure places around the world to show him how to make frames. He comes back from one of these trips, I think it was in Hungary or someplace, with little pieces of paper in an envelope. And he wants to make collages. You know, he took them off the walls where they throw up posters and leave them and they, you know, that kind of thing. He took the paper off the wall and had a little envelope of them. So now we're back in the schwitz again, and he said, we should go and make art. Where do you want to go? Italy. Venice? Ah, too damp for my chest. I don't like it, you know. Yeah. Rome? Very busy, very busy. So we go to Florence. So, you know, I asked for fashion advice before we leave, and Marty says, all black. That way everything matches. So we're dressed in black, and off we go to Europe. So on the plane, and at this time, airports still had small places you could go and smoke. I mean, we went in and out of airports, and I don't smoke. I had to wear a nicotine patch after I came back for 2 weeks. I mean, the whole thing was just difficult. So we're on the plane, and it must be 2 in the morning, and Marty elbows me and says, I'm going to ambient smoke. I said, Marty, what the fuck are you talking about, ambient smoke, you know? He says, no, don't watch this, watch this. So he takes a couple of hits off a cigarette, the plane lights up, boom, and he starts getting in federal law, blah, 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 you can't light up, this and that. So, you know, it's Marty, so I jump up in my seat and start looking all around to see who did it, you know? Just, it never dawned on him not to do that. So we go, we're in Florence, we get to this hotel. It takes us about 2 days at happy hour to develop our own crowd. Now, I didn't know we spoke Italian. I never knew that because we had all these people coming down from the rooms to hang out with us. The bartender wanted us to take us home. this guy that served in the hotel, he missed 2 trains to hang out with us. So I said to Marty, we're here, we got to go up to Tuscany. It's wine country, that kind of thing. So we get this little car on a pouring rain. I can have this much cracked in the window, and he's smoking but we assumed they wanted us to drink and drive because there's bars all along the road. So, we did what we should do. We pulled over, we had a drink here, we had a drink there. 2 days before that, I'm going to go back, and he said to me, it's going to be Sunday. We're Jews, we have to eat Chinese food. I said, Marty, we're in fucking Italy. I mean, seriously. So he would go to sleep in the afternoon, he'd take a little nap, I didn't nap, and I took a run, and sure enough, outside of a building, the red balls have outside a Chinese restaurant, and I ran back to the river to figure out where it was. So we're up in Tuscany for the day. We come back, it's Sunday, we're going to have Chinese food. So we go, now by this time we've had a full day of being out. We park the car, go have Chinese food, and of course we're creating a ruckus in the restaurant, they're starting to bring us things, everything's happening. We go out, we lose the car. There's no way we can find this animal. So we go back to the hotel. To get a cab driver to take you someplace without a destination was impossible. So they negotiated, in those days must have been $200-300 deal. We get into the cab and say to him, it's a statue, the guy's bent over, he's holding a gun, he drives around the block, we get out, most expensive cab ride I've ever had in my life. But we go do this. And you know what? 4:30 at the lounge. By that time, Beth was pretty sick. I had Brianna in tow all the time. He had pinwheels, frozen pinwheels for this kid. And he would take her there. He would treat her like gold. And he's among all these wonderful, strange people that we all got together and had just the fabulous time of our life. Marty and I would yell at each other, tell stories. It was just the best, absolutely the best. There's no chance here in my heart he doesn't exist. And he will forever. I get a call from Cary, says to me, when is the last time you talked to my dad? And I says, it's got to be 2.5 weeks, maybe. I owe him a phone call. He's in hospice care. So I go to see him, and I look at him, and I say to him, what the fuck are you doing? And I could see his eyes light up, and by this point, I had to put my ear to his mouth, and he says to me, what do you hear? What do you say? And David comes in and says, you have to take medicine. Marty says, vodka. And now, Marty and I roomed together at one point. So, I'm sitting on the edge of the bed. We're talking. He sits up, takes his shirt off, takes his pills, a glass of vodka. And you know what? We've had drinks like that for 30 years. I'm not going to do this. Anyway, so the end is coming. There's no doubt in my mind. I watch my friend disappear in front of me. I'm not going to do this. And that son of a bitch, I told him, it's July 1st. I said, you can die 11:59 or you can die 12:01 tomorrow. Not on my fucking birthday. 6 in the morning, Cary couldn't wait to get on the phone to tell me, her old man, one more time, the rest of my life, I will never be able to forget this man. He died on my freaking birthday. I mean, seriously, look at this. I mean, seriously, who puts an urn like that anywhere? You know what? If you don't celebrate his life and you don't laugh, you're not doing him justice. Thank you.
Wow, sitting here and listening to Jay talk. I know, fuck it, we ain't gonna do that. It's it just brings back memories to everybody here. He had a very distinctive way of talking, right? Yeah, you know what I mean? Fuck it, we ain't gonna do that. David Nordell. David, can you see us? David is going to come to us in a video. David has his own issues, but David needed to be part of this. I met David many, many years ago, and I was enamored of the fact that he was this wonderful artist. But you know something? When he farted, it smelled like the same as everybody else's. And Marty used to remind me of that. When he introduced, and Jay, you can validate this, when he introduced me to all these people, oh my God, it was the artist for Michael Jackson. You know, I was very impressed. And of course, he had to tell me about the story when he came in the UPS outfit. That's Michael. But David's going to join us. We have to technically hook him up. This is the most technical thing I think David Nordell has ever done. I love it. This is so odd, isn't it? Isn't this very odd? You know, this whole technological thing? Oh my God, Jay, absolutely. Are you kidding? Come up here and do this with me. Come over here. Come over here.
Not everyone has read Matt's post. To please do so because he's written a beautiful tribute to his father, and also condolences to those who miss him the most, Matt and David and Cary and Peggy. I can't believe Marty's gone. Some years back, we made a pact, and we said that whoever passed first, the other person would write a eulogy. And back then, it was obvious that I was the one who was going to go first. And I don't know what happened. I can't believe Marty's gone. And Marty was a complex man. There's so many sides to his personality. And he was the guy who always made sure everybody was well fed and that everyone was having a good time. And if someone needed something, Marty was there. The world is not the same, but I'm so grateful that Marty was my best friend for 32 years. Once I get past the shock of losing my best friend, I know I have so many wonderful, humorous memories to last me the rest of my life. Godspeed, Marty.
My question is, how did he have 45 best friends?
You tell me. How did he do it?
He was Marty. He made everybody.
Come share this with me.
He made everybody feel special wherever you were. You know, he got sick, and only thing I could do is invite everybody over to the house, have dinner. You know, we always did that. And I got to tell you something. He was fabulous that night. He was funny. We chatted. We chatted about things from 1,000 years ago, and you know, he was able to touch everybody around him just by a smile. That was single eye thing he does and stuff. And everybody was his best friend. I mean, we have tattoos like you guys have never seen them, but we have them, you know. How do you do that? How do you become that special of a human being in the world that you can do that? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
We're going to hear from Carol, whenever you're ready. And until then, Jay and I are going to fill in, and we're going to continue to.
Marty,
what are we doing here?
Marty,
right now?
Marty calls me up. Do you have a flatbed truck? You know, a tow truck. What the fuck you need a flatbed? He's got those 2 sticks of dynamite. They were on Paseo de Peralta someplace, and sure enough, I knew a guy with a flatbed truck that I could go pick up. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that we would do. I mean, he put them on the back, we take them over, he had that, you know, big lift. But there was never a question if Marty asked you for something, whether you could do it or not. There was never a question.
He said, well, he'd figure out how to do it.
And, yeah, but would you say no to him?
I've said no a couple of times. I mean, I got to tell you, I was in the loft on St. Charles
No one
Street.
can take your place, even though you hired the best, and as framers, they were very, very good. They just weren't Marty. Marty was not only the best framer, he was also one of the best dads. At one point, I was in bad shape financially. Marty didn't care. Oi, just bring me the money when you can, when you have it. Get out of here. I cannot tell you how incredible it felt to have Marty look at a piece of my work for God knows how long. He would take out 10 possibilities of frames, and he would quickly narrow them down to 5, and then take forever to pick the perfect match for the piece in front of him, and he was always right. After a few years of Marty just being my framer, our families became friends. My husband Daniel and daughter Elizabeth and I loved you, Marty. I cannot tell you how many other Santa Feans will miss you always. At one point, after having spent an evening at the Horowitz home, Elizabeth turned to Daniel and myself and asked what language Marty was speaking. I told her that Marty was speaking Brooklyn, and wherever he is now, he is probably still speaking Brooklyn. Marty, you will be missed by so many. Dear Marty, I miss you already. No one can take your place, even though you hired the...
Did we not get it the first time? There we go. It's over.
We can blame this on two people, on two things. We can blame it on COVID and Trump. We got to blame it on somebody. So that was it? Oh, my. You know, Jay, it's kind of interesting. You know, you bring up all these stories, and I have my stories from the other side of the, I guess, the lake or what have you. And, you know, did he ever tell you the stories about going to Peking duck?
Absolutely.
Did he ever tell you stories when we were young and we were kids and we were drug dealers?
Yes, he did. The Florida run.
Oh, God.
You
The
think
Flo-
I don't? I sat naked with this man in a schwitz for 15 years. You know, you gotta
Coconut
get
Grove
you
Hotel.
Gotta get Grove. Gotta get
The
Grove.
Coconut Grove Hotel, notorious. But the funny thing about Marty is that, you know, you just brought it up. I feel like I'm doing a shtick with you.
No, we're doing it. It's okay. You know what? Would he have it any other way? That's the question.
No.
No. No.
I wouldn't do it any other way.
Me neither.
I don't know any other way. This is why we all got
But I'm
along.
going to wander around talking to myself now because he's not there. I mean,
No, you'll be talking to him.
I did today.
That's what old Jews do.
That's the old Jews. We're all a study become old Jews. We stroll. We don't walk. We don't camp. It's that 40-year thing in the desert. You know what I mean?
You know,
We
it's kind of
don't
funny
camp.
because when when he moved here and he started to make some friends, he would call me up and tell me about your Saturday afternoon lunches, the old Jews lunch,
You're right. I never
because
went.
you went to the deli, and it was kind of really funny. But we're going to continue this moment, which is a long moment, at dinner tonight. Matt,
You up?
I need to invite you up here because we will never run out of material, but we're going to run out of time.
We've got all the time we need. It's okay. Hello. Hello out there in the universe. How many people are watching Bob Dino? Bob will tell. We don't know. A lot of people are out there, I imagine. I've got my gold martini because it's well after 4:30 now, and I hope that everybody who's watching, if you partake, have something that you're gonna toast to my dad with here. So I actually have what's ended up happening over the last couple of days is I've collected some words from a couple of other people, and then I've got some things that I wanted to share. You're the best. the genes run deep here. So this is from Aunt Lynn, my father's big sister. They're in Long Island, and so this is what she wanted me to share. Living so far apart, most of the time I spent with my brother was on the phone. We talked on a regular basis. Sometimes it was to share updates about our families, and sometimes it was just to stay in touch and share some time together. Me being a non-traveler, as we know, and a homebody by nature, I got to have a vicarious experience listening to my brother's adventures. He always had the most interesting and entertaining stories. Talking to him was something I always looked forward to and something I'll miss dearly. I love you always, my dear brother. Love you always, Sisti Lynn. And then there's more. Wait, there's more. Mark Spencer, who was another member of what we would call the old fart lunch, or what they would just call lunch. David Nordell and Mark and my dad, 25, 30 years, would go to lunch together on Saturdays, sometimes with other people, different artists, Jay would come you came once in a while, right? And like if Harlan came to town, he would come. You never went, you didn't want to be old. Okay, Jay never went, but yeah. So Mark Spencer sent this just a little, he wanted to just share a thought, and he says, Marty's passing has left a huge crater in our community, our hearts, and in my life. His generosity and acceptance was always warm, loving, and reflected in his cooking. Oh, how Jean and I would love to share just one more meal with our dear friend. See you later, Marty. And then I got one more in the end here that I think is important to share. It's from Dennis Yaris. The Yaris Art Projects represents our father's artwork, and they're going to continue to. And Dennis wanted to just speak to my dad and to his artwork, but excuse me. What he says is, Dear all family Horowitz, I loved Marty all through our friendship. I consider Marty an iconic figure that illuminated a room as he did my life and that of my gallery. We never engaged in disagreements, but rather entered into a realm of respect and encouragement through times characterized as glorious, as well as within moments of adversity. Trials and tribulations became distant memories when we flourished together in our arena of art. I am ever grateful to have known a man that heightened my spirit and brought a measure of joy and laughter to my being. I will miss Marty terribly, and my waking moments will embrace a void that cannot be renewed, for Marty is irreplaceable. For Marty dispelled uncertainty, for Marty was a survivor, for Marty was a brilliant light of talent, and I lost my place, and the purest of wisdom, an uncompromising vocal angel that will forever be, who will ever be graced with a throne of authenticity and truth. Wow, Dennis. I hope that the dreams we shared on earth will further abound in heaven when we meet again. Until then, his spirit reigns eternal. My most heartfelt thoughts are extended to Peggy, Cary, Matt, and David, who are ever blessed to be his family. Marty's legacy will be sustained on Fifth Avenue and beyond. So my dad was really, really happy that he, when he had an opportunity to have a show on Fifth Avenue, that was like a really big deal. It was about 2 years ago, and that was just like, to become an artist and to make it as an artist was to show on Fifth Avenue, and it was so important to him, and he got to do that. And it was when we were there, and it was hot and humid and sweaty, and just like how New York would be in the middle of July, and it was beautiful. So this one, and I have my own stuff too to say. This one's gonna be a little difficult because I got a call when I was leaving, right before I left, from Nat Owings, who expressed to me what he would like for my father to know and for us to know. And he was really thinking about coming here. He's got some health issues himself, and and so he's just looking out for himself, and he almost came, and then he didn't come, and then he was speechless, and then he tried to write things, but it didn't make sense. And so he gave me this whole spiel, and I could never live up to the way that Nat would have delivered this, and I typed it very quickly, so we'll see if I can make sense of it. But basically, the gist of it was back in February, which is just right before the COVID thing started, Nat and my dad went shopping together at Albertsons, which I had never heard. I didn't know that they did this, but they decided that it would be nice to go shopping together. And Nat described it as the odd couple sort of experience. Nat was Felix, and Dad was Oscar, and they kibitzed along, and you know, whatever, they walked through the aisles, and they pointed things out, and Dad shared things that he thought were nice to buy, and so they bought Dover Sole. Dad really loved his Dover Sole at the end. And so he said, Nat, try this Dover Sole, and Nat really liked the Dover Sole, and so they bought Dover Sole together. And then they bought lemons and vegetables. This is Nat's like favorite memory of Dad. Like this like personifies the relationship. It's really amazing. Let's see. So then they went then they went down the aisle where the cleaning supplies were, and Dad told Nat about dishwasher pods, which he didn't know about them. and so they like kind of, you know, went back and forth about that I can't imagine what it would be to be a fly on the wall in this situation. Anyway, Nat said that every day when he puts a dishwasher pod in his dishwasher, he thinks of Marty. and it's a metaphor for everything, you know, that my dad was so thoughtful and kind and sweet that it was like all these little things. It could have been anything, but it was just that he cared so much to share that dishwasher pods are the thing, you know, that Nat should take part in that. Let's see if I can make sense of it, whatever else he said. He said, it was always easy with Marty, no judgment, just understanding. And he says, do you want to know why I love Marty? He told me how to love pods for my dishwasher. And if Nat was delivering this, it would be better. But he's so sweet. He's really funny. And he said he loved every minute of his time with Dad. And he had a lot more to say, too, but I had to go and come here. So we will hear from him in the future. We are most definitely going to have a service where we can welcome people that are watching on their computers right now who can't be here, because I don't think that Dad would have wanted it any other way than to have a big party. He had a big party for his birthday, but he wants to have another big party, I'm sure. There's no way that we can't have a big party. And I talked with Manny from the gallery, and they'd like to hang his art, and we'll do something. It might be in a year or, you know, whenever the pandemic ends, but we're going to do it. Oh, the Yaris Art Projects. Why, thank you. My wife is in communications, and I appreciate that. So, God, I have so much stuff, and I wrote things down. Dad would do this a lot. People always asked him to speak at events and at people's funerals, and he would never write anything down, and I was always like, Dad, how do you do that? And he goes, you just know what to say when you get up there, and he would give the best eulogies. So I give myself a couple of little pointers so I just didn't want to miss anything, because there's so much. So he used to say, when your number's up, your number's up. And I understand that was sort of like an old biker saying. Is that right, Harlan? Or he decided. When your number's up, your number's up. And I remember, you know, whenever I was little and you start to realize that death is something that happens and you get scared. And I would say, you know, like, what happens, you know, what about death? And he would go, well, when your number's up, your number's up. Well, what does that mean? And he would go, well, just don't worry about it. When your number's up, you know? So, and then, you know, it went on like that over the years when I was, you know, when you're in school and they tell you, don't smoke cigarettes, kids, that's bad for you. And I would go, well, my dad smokes a lot of cigarettes. And I'd go home and I'd go, Dad, you know, yeah, now we know why it's bad for you. Yeah, thanks. So I go, Dad, like, aren't you worried about smoking these cigarettes? And he'd go, Matto, when your number's up, your number's up. And I'd go, okay, fine, that's all I got. Dad, what, like, aren't you ever scared you're gonna fall down on your Harley? When your number's up, your number's up. And that's how he lived, and I really admire it. And every day I have strived, and I will continue to strive to be more like him, because he didn't worry about when he might die, or he didn't worry about, you know, what might happen. He just lived every day to the fullest. So A lot of the stories that I have of him are stories that he would tell and stories that my grandmother would tell. And we don't know how accurate any of them actually really are. But he grew up in Oceanside, Long Island. We know that. He had a boat that he used to tell us about that would sink all the time. And he would always be bailing out the boat. And that was like a big thing. He had his friends Moose, Pinky, and Wiener, as I remember their names being. And I don't know if they're out there. Like, I hope people are watching. And they were there, and they would go out in the boat, and they'd sink the boat. Grandma would say that the girls would come and go to the house like hot and cold running water. And that was her saying. She said it for years. And, I don't know what to do with Marty. It would be, we'd have the pool. The kids would play in the pool. And then all these girls would be coming, and we didn't know who they were, and they were in and out. And that's how he was. And even at the very end, he was flirting with the nurses and the people that were there to care for him. Even when he couldn't talk and he couldn't really move, he would move his eyebrows. Yeah, and he'd wink at them, and he'd and they loved it. It was It was the essence of him. So he skipped school a lot. He went to the pool hall. He had a paper route he used to tell us about. He used to sell fireworks. He would sell all kinds of stuff. He used to teach. He used to teach dance. My grandmother, his mother Rosie, had a dance studio, and Lenny used to dance there and teach, and my father did as well. And his first wife was a dancer, and they danced together when they were kids. And he used to talk about dancing in the Catskills. He had a band, and the band would go play in the Catskills, and then late at night, the Dirty Dancing would happen. And so we would, growing up, watch Dirty Dancing with Patrick Swayze, and my father would say, that's me, that's not, that's me. And so it was, because I believe it. He was a great dancer. When I was little, he used to take me on his feet, and he would dance, and I would be on his toes, and he would, give me the rhythm that way. He was also a go-go dancer, on his word. I don't have any confirmation from anybody else, but I believe that too. When he lived in Manhattan, he went and danced in a club. Maybe not. I'm not so sure. I think yeah, it happened, right? He said that he was in a cage and all this stuff.
Well, I know I went to some of those places.
You gotta. It was weird. So he started framing when he was a teenager. I'm gonna just go through some of my little historic things and give you some bites here. He went to School of Visual Arts in New York City. He majored in acid, according to him, but he also has a degree in art, and he was, that was what he was made to be, was an artist. In the framing world, he learned to gild, and he learned to make frames. And as we know, he became a master gilder, and he became the person who wrote, along with Lou, who's over there, the most comprehensive book on gilding to date. And for years, would go and teach from the book, and people would come to learn from him. He used to talk about riding his Harley around New York City, getting into trouble. You could probably tell us more about that, actually, Harlan. He's traveled to the different hot dog stands. He lived in the Village for a long time, went to John's Pizza. He took us there when we were older. We would go and he would share, and we would all share the memories of pizza. That's where he met Mom. And he had, this story. She was on one side of the street, I was on the other side of the street, and they passed each other and went on for years, and they got together then. And then I was born. I was conceived on Charles Lane, apparently, which I didn't need to know that, but I knew that, and that was cool. And then we moved to Tarrytown when I was little, and David was born in Tarrytown. He said he smoked 4 packs of cigarettes a day during that time. Some people are shaking their heads because you guys were there. He smoked a lot, and he had 2 shifts running at the frame shop, and this is in the late 80s, and he got really sick. He had pneumonia, and the doctors told him that he had to, cut back on his smoking, obviously, but also that he couldn't live in that climate anymore, and that's why we moved to Santa Fe. 1988, we moved to Santa Fe. He started with Lou Tillmont, Gold Leaf Framemakers, which is still running hot, and David's going to keep running it. He wrote the book on gilding. He had many names, many of which he created himself. The Vitz, the Maestro, the Gold Guy. You know which ones he created. Actually, most of these he created himself. Super Jew. And then Marty, the rock and roll smarty. That was a good one. He would listen to the oldies station, and he would call like any song that came on. I left that one out, but that was actually, so what he said was that his father's nickname was Mighty Fart, and that he was Mighty Fart Jr. I was gonna leave it out, but that's fine, yeah. But when we were growing up, this is what I can actually attest to because I was there. He was a really great father. He was really loving and wonderful and unusual. He wasn't like the other kids' dads, but he did do things like he taught me how to ride my bike, and I'll never forget that. And he taught me how to shave and things like that. We watched a lot of movies that he would tell us about how life was when he was young. Dirty Dancing, where he was Patrick Swayze in that movie, and then we would watch Grease, and in that movie he was, the main guy, Danny, and then in Saturday Night Fever he was definitely John Travolta's character there. That was Dancing in New York. That was me. I was John Travolta. And one of his very favorite movies was West Side Story, and that's where he got his jet song that he would sing. Which we already heard a little rendition of earlier. He also really loved The Wizard of Oz, and he loved Peter Pan. And we were talking about this recently. He was in so many ways like Peter Pan, and it was the old Mary Martin musical, and he would have us like watch the musical, and he would sing along. I won't grow up, and then he'd have us crow. Do you remember that, Cary? Cary was little. He would go, okay, kids, let's crow. And it was sweet, Something that I think people may not know because, you might not have totally seen the side of him, but it was there. It was like, we would watch The Wizard of Oz, and I remember it was about 15 years ago, and I was an adult, and we were watching The Wizard of Oz together, and at the very end, when Dorothy clicks her heels together and she says, "There's no place like home, there's no place like home," I looked over at my dad, and I've never seen him cry before, like ever before this time, and he was cheering up, and he's like, "There's no place like home, Dorothy." And he was such a sap, and I loved it, and I really got that from him. That was I look like him, and I'm a sap like him. Those are like probably the main, among many other traits, but we would eat dinner together every night. Mom would make dinner, Dad would make dinner, or they would make dinner together. And it was kind of like growing up in the 90s, not a lot of families ate dinner together, but we did, and it was sort of, it was like a given. We were expected to be there and have dinner as a family, and he would sing, and we would sing, and he would curse and yell, and he would tell stories. He would tell all the stories about the boat sinking and all this stuff that he would tell us about in the old days, and whatever stories he had. And it was wonderful. We would sit after dinner often and listen to records, vinyl that he had, and he would teach, I remembered him teaching me about rock and roll music and like who was who and Motown and why, what made Motown and a lot of this music history. And it was really, it was really special. I'm trying not to get teared up here. David got into motorcycles. He rode here today on Dad's '84 Police Special, and that was something that they really shared together. And Cary was his dolly girl. He called her Dolly, and he loved her so much. And she was the baby girl, And so let's see. Put me to work when I was 13. He did the same thing to David. Did he do that to you, Cary? She was the dolly girl. She was young. She was younger. Oh, she got to move ahead and burnish rather than sweeping the floor and sanding. But he insisted that I come to work when I was 13. Lou was still there at that time. Lou took me under his wing and took me to ice cream every day and stuff in between, the sweeping and the sanding and and all the things that we would do. And he taught me the value of hard work, and he did that for all of us, and I really, really appreciate that. He would pull the family together when times were really tough. When Mom got sick a few years back, and we had to get take care of business, he would call, and he was cool, and this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna get together, we're gonna meet here, and we're gonna take care of things. When David went down on the Harley a few years back, same thing. Like, he would call up, and he was just cool, and we took care of it and pulled everybody together. Not going on too long, am I? Okay, great. Thank you. He was always. Oh, crap. What? Oh, yeah. Okay. He was always up at night. He would, Jay and him were actually roommates for a little while.
I don't know if they can hear me.
I don't-
He went up, it's late at night, and this you gotta hear.
You can tell. Jump in, yeah.
There were only two things. He's up, it's late at night, I still sleep like crap on a regular basis. And so we're sitting together. He whips out his White Castle hamburgers, which I think that has something to do with this end, but I'm not gonna go there, all right? And we see an infomercial for the Temptations. So you can picture your father in his nighttime outfit with the robe and the slippers and all that, and he and I are dancing in the living room to an infomercial discussing the Temptations. It must have been 3 o'clock in the morning. And you know what? It really was just what it was. It was nothing strange, it's what we did. Hey, God, I'm gonna miss this old man. I'm telling you that much. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, anybody wants to jump in. I love this shtick here. You got one, don't you? What do you?
Well, I'm not sure whether we continue it here or we continue it at dinner. Go for it. Because I think we're making this up as we go along, which is how we always roll. Lou, I remember you, Lou, and I didn't realize you were sitting behind me. I didn't recognize you. I remember the young Lou who moved out here with the Horowitz family, and you were always the guy that made it work. You were the grounded wire. And do you remember, Lou, when we built those benches? We built the benches that he's still in the shop, with the 2x4s, and I'll never forget that. I mean, Lou, I haven't seen you in, 30 years. I don't know how many years it is, but it's good to see you. And, you were an anchor in his life. Would anybody else like to say anything, David? David? Come on up here, David. Yeah, I cannot stop drawing you in.
I guess we invited you here for some reason.
Well, as the Horowitz family knows, I'm an instigator. I'm an issue. And that's why maybe we all survive together. But the one thing that we all have in common? This man was our best friend. And you said it, Jay, it's an amazing situation. I mean, how many times can you have this, situation that comes by in your life? This is my moment.
You ready now?
I'm just doing what Marty would want me to do.
You call me up and okay.
Wouldn't Marty? This is what Marty would want, and this is how we always rolled, right, Peg?
So yeah, he would wake up in the middle of the night all the time. We went on a business trip once to where were we? Outside of San Antonio, New Braunfels, and we got in too late and there was no place to eat. But you could buy food downstairs at the counter. So we got one of the DiGiorno microwave pizzas, and they had set us up with one room with 2 beds. So we go up there, and I'm gonna wake up, and set up the trade show the next morning and get down there and have it ready by 8 a.m. And I'm going to let him sleep in because he can't wake up early. You know, that's just out of the cards. He wakes up when he wakes up. So I'm trying to go to sleep, and he's watching CNN, and he microwaves the pizza. So I'm laying there, and all I hear is, and then the ice in his glass, like a clink, 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 clink. And the CNN is just blasting. I never shared another hotel room with him again. No matter where we went, we always had to have separate rooms. Most importantly, what I want to say here today, though, because I think we've covered like a lot of that, and I know you've got more to tell and stuff too, but is just to thank everybody that's out there watching us. Like, I can feel everybody out there watching us. I know there's so many people, and I talked to people today, like our crew at the shop that's sitting there watching. I know there's a crew up on Upper Summit Road that are sitting there drinking right now. I've talked to people in Oklahoma, New York today. Everybody is gathered around out there right now getting drunk thinking about him. And he loved you all, and I love you all, and we're all family. And thank you all for being here today, wherever you are.
Well, I think where we are is we're here. And I hate to use a coined expression, but we're present. We're present in the moment for our dear friend Marty Horowitz. You know, I think we all are here for a reason because this man touched us. He touched us in a very special way. And that's a very unique trait. How many human beings in the world you can say that about? And, you know, I don't want to be trite, and I don't want to be repetitive, and I don't want to be politically correct, and I'm certainly not going to be patronizing. But this fucking dude was interesting. Trust me. And I cherish every moment that I spent with him, and for 61 years we were good friends, best friends, and other than my parents, this is the first time I've lost somebody this close. And with that being said, I think we're going to go to the bull ring, and we're going to have a couple of martinis on Marty. Not on Marty, on me, but for Marty. But, you know, I think we're doing what he would want us to do, and that, I think, is the most important thing. And it's real easy for me, and apparently it's pretty easy for you guys. God bless, Marty.
Now, I have more to say, so you can't wrap it up yet.
Well, go for it.
You got to finish after I.
No,
I got
God
more to
bless.
I'm almost done. Really got to the meat here of what I was talking about. Thank you. He was up at night, which was more annoying when you had to share a hotel room with him or a home as an adult maybe with him. But when I was a kid and when we were kids, and if we were sick and we woke up in the night and we had the stomach flu or had a bad dream, he would be up. He would go to sleep at like 8 on the couch, and he'd wake up at 1 or 2 in the morning, and he'd be up. And he was always there to like comfort us, you know. When I was in high school and I'd be out partying or whatever, or later on when I lived in New York and I would have a heartbreak or something would happen and it was the middle of the night and normally you can't talk to anybody then, he was always there and I could call him and he would talk with me and he would always comfort me. And it was actually the best time to visit with him because he was really present then, because he wasn't like at work and like dealing with all the crazy stuff. And what he also did at night was he made his artwork then. That was when he conceived of the things that he was going to create. And he would have, like, sometimes we'd wake up in the morning, or if I came home at night, and he'd be there watching TV, and he'd be drawing pictures, and he would have these ideas for, like, saucers floating off the walls, and all these things that he was going to do. He was going to, you know, along with being a gilder, he came up with this idea of how he was going to use the gold to make art in a way that nobody ever had before. And his ideas were often just so big and interesting that he had to somehow try to pull it all together and figure it out. And that's what he did at night. He gilded a lot of other things too, martinis and food, and you name it, he gilded it. I just gotta. He he would, so ultimately what would happen is that, and David was talking about this the other day, and if you want to jump back in and talk about this again, I think it's really, if you'd like to. What I want to mention is that, you know, when it came to the frames and it came to his artwork both, that he created a community around himself, that he knew that if he was going to make the frames and take it to the level that he took it to, and if he was going to create the art and have these saucers flying off the walls and mounted, and, you know, he would create these wacky objects that shouldn't exist in space the way that they did, and he would have his people that would create it with him. And when it came to the frame shop, you know, he didn't go looking for the best people to help him out. He saw the best in people that were around him. He would bring people into the shop that were you know, kids, or they were people that were maybe didn't have another job doing something and they were a little lost, or they were, you know, they were trying to find their way in the world, and he would always see the potential in people, and those were the people that he would invite and he would hire to work at the shop. And what? I did hear you. Well, come tell the story.
Because this is we'll wrap it up in a minute. Here's a story on behalf that I really like, because I've heard a lot of stories, a lot of wonderful things about my father forever, but especially this last week. The urn that we put him in was made by Stacy and Pat over at what is that, Jackalope. And Stacy was talking to me about the night that her and my father met. And I never heard the story about when those two good friends met. And I wish Stacy was here, but the damn pandemic, right? So when they met, apparently, they met smoking cigarettes outside of a gallery, which makes sense. And they went drinking, which makes sense. They went dancing, which makes even more sense. And they started their friendship that way. But what she told me, which I thought was very interesting, was that night, he drew out on a cocktail napkin the first project that they were going to make together. So I said, he put you to work the first night he met you, huh? And she just expressed to me how much fun they always had making art together. And like you said, yeah, inspiring people, bringing out the best in people, finding their inner talents, and just finding the best fabricators from around the country for his art, and then turning his art into what the fabricators that he had could offer him too. I mean, it was beautiful. Like, his art and everything was bigger than himself. So without the people that he brought in, without the people that he brought in with his love, like, he could never have made the things that he made. Like, we all made it together, which is why I'm looking out there. We all made it together, you know. I'm sure, wishes that he could be here right now. And I wish he could be here too. Okay, there you go.
Thank you.
There's a story.
I'm almost done here. Do you want to say something, Cary? No. It's been difficult. But we've laughed a lot through even this period, which he would have definitely, you said it, you know, he would have approved of that. We cried a lot, but we've laughed. We always laughed. That's what we did more than anything growing up with him. He was the best salesman ever. I think we've kind of gone over that a bit. David Rothman once told me that Marty could sell you the Brooklyn Bridge, he said. Best salesman ever. It was amazing. Let's see, someone else, a good friend, Ray Sandoval, said that he would probably talk his way out of death and the Grim Reaper would be out of a job. That was one of the more recent ones that I heard. So he's left a legacy behind in the gilding world, in the framing world, in the art world, in our hearts, not to be too cheesy, but really, you know, we will never forget him. And everybody out, I have no idea who's watching, how many people are watching, but based on all the calls and all the emails and all the people reaching out to the three of us, between three people in the last week, it's unbelievable. And everybody was his family. He treated everybody like family. We're gonna definitely have a real memorial after the pandemic, and we'll talk about that later. And there's some other ideas about ways that we might honor him. And I wanted to end with just a little story about one of the last times that we were together. I'd been visiting him, you know, through this whole period. Haley and Camilo had not seen him in a little while because we were trying to protect him from this virus, right? And it became apparent that he wasn't going to be around a whole lot longer. So we all came over to visit. It was 2 Saturdays ago. It was a couple of days before he passed away, and we sat outside on the porch, and I made Dad hadn't eaten really hardly at all in days already, and but he said, "Make us some hot dogs." And I was like, David was in the house, and I go running, David, he's gonna eat. Where are the hot dogs? There's gotta be hot dogs. And of course, there's actually a freezer full of hot dogs in his garage, because of course there is. So, then the deep freeze, right? He called it the deep freeze, and all of us youngsters were like, what's a deep freeze? And that was what it was. So we cooked up some hot dogs. He ate a hot dog, which was really pretty cool. And he told a couple of stories, and he didn't have a whole lot of energy at that point. You know, he really had to work to come out to show my family and my child that he was our father, and he loved us, and that he cared. And he said to Camilo, who's 14 now, we're sitting there, and he's looking at the adobe wall around the backyard was like a little dirty, and he says, "Hey, I got a job for you." And he said, "You got to paint my wall." And that was his way of saying, you know, like with us, you know, you're 13, you're old enough, you can work now. And that he put so much value into his work. That was what made him. That's what makes a man. That's what makes a person, is that you can work now. You can do this thing. And he said, "Paint my wall. You're going to paint my wall." And it was really meaningful. And it was really it was that gesture of welcoming him into manhood and you know, you're part of the family, and paint the wall. And it was beautiful. And then Camilo said to him, Camilo always liked to ask him this question whenever we got together. And I'm trying to, I've made it this far without losing it. He said, "Marty, what happens when you're a jet?" And my dad, he was very quiet. He was quiet, you know, which was weird in the end there. He just didn't have a lot of energy. And he said, "When you're a jet all the way, from your first cigarette to your last dying day." And then he said, "Never forget that." and we won't, and we will miss him. He was my hero. We all loved him deeply. I like that. We won't miss him because he's with us. Thank you, Jay. We all loved him deeply, and I feel him, it's really profound, actually, the ways in which I feel him. I had his hat on, his Harley hat, and I got out of my car to pump gas yesterday, and the sun was behind me, and I saw my shadow, and I was like, oh my God, you know, he's right there, and like Peter Pan's shadow, you know. Anyway, I hope that people have a little something that they're drinking at home. It doesn't need to be alcohol. For him, it was. L'chaim. And back to you, Harlan. Thank you.
I mean, you know, this could honestly be endless, because the man had endless opportunities and an endless life. And Marty is not dead. He is just moved into another neighborhood. And we will join him. I have a feeling that Jay and I will be joining him sometime in our lives, and all the rest of the people will be joining him. And that's all we're going to... What? For 61 years, I always knew where he was. Jay, I'm going to tell you that. If there's one thing I know about Marty, I always knew where he was. He may change addresses, but I knew where he was. The one thing that I think that we've all heard tonight is that Marty was a contributor to life, and he was a creator. He created friendships, he created art, he created love, he created compassion, passion, and he created a relationship with people. And that word relationships is a very, very important word. Relationshiping. People use it in business. They use it in personal life. But if you think about it, looking a person square in the eye, spending time with them and being present, that's the gift that he gave me. God bless. Thank you. Well, we're not applauding, we're applauding Marty, we're celebrating Marty. What would Marty want? Marty would like us to go to the restaurant or whatever it is and have a toast and just, continue the conversation. We have to continue the conversation because that's what he brought to us. And you want to know something? That's what we brought to him too. We brought that to him, and he brought it to us. And that's what's called that relationship. Very, very unique. There's very few times in your world you could say love. This is about love without any fucking bullshit. Amen. Lou, did you want to talk? Did you want to come up and say? Lou, did you want to come up and say? You look like you want to say something. I'm precocious.
Yeah, this is true. I always have been. And so if you don't know me, I moved. Marty and I moved out here together in 1988 to open up Gold Leaf Framemakers, and I've known all of his kids since they were very young. And one of the things I always remember about Marty is, I know a guy. I know a guy. And that never left. That I'm going to help you. I know a guy. I know something special. And this last year, Marty and I knew each other for 37 years. I always time it by Matt's birthday, and over the last year, we both had our struggles with cancer. I was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and Marty had lung cancer. And I remember, we were driving back and forth. He needed to go to Albuquerque to do radiation treatments. And we would drive together. And we got the opportunity over the last year to say everything to each other that we wanted to say. We hashed out old times. We laughed about the current times. We told stories. And it was marvelous. And in January, when I started going through my piece, and I told him the biopsy came back and I have cancer, he says, I know a guy. I know a guy. And he was there, and that was really important to me because, he was dying, and he was going through his, and it was, and we shared that, we talked all the time. How are you doing? How are you doing? How are you doing? Do you need something? I know a guy. Do you need something? I know a guy. And, I don't know all the guys, but I was able to be the guy. I was able to be the guy who could drive him back and forth, and I was able to be the guy to talk to him, and I was so honored, Marty, at a very important time in my life, back in my 20s when I was a little bit lost, and I really wasn't sure what, I was going to do, and what was, I got caught in the, the whirlwind that was Marty, that was your dad, and I got caught in that whirlwind, and I'm better for it. That's what I want to say is that I got caught in that whirlwind, and I spent a long time in that whirlwind, a long time with all of you, and then we were apart for a little while, and we came back together, and that was the most beautiful part. And I've never lost the connection to each one of the kids. I'm looking at, if you can't see on the TV, I'm looking at Cary and David and Matt and their families and their friends, and I value that. And Camilo and Haley and Matt stopped by my house the other day, and I was talking, and I said to Camilo, and I'll say it again, that people die, and their physical being leaves, but they don't leave. They live inside of each one of us, especially people who have the kind of that whirlwind, that power that Marty brought. that he brought to life, that love of life and that power that he brought. That I know a guy. We're going to get through this. I remember, when we started the shop first year, I think we each made $4,000. It was ridiculously dumb that we were even there. And then we got a contract to go do, to go gold leaf a sculpture in Caesar's Palace, and we made a ton of money. And it was like, because he never gave up. He never gave up on people, and he never gave up on the project that he was, and I learned that from him. I learned that, when things are going bad, or, to just double down, no matter how bad the situation, no matter how ridiculous it is, double down, double down, figure out who the guy is. And what I was telling Camilo is that, physically people die, but they live on within us, and they live on within us, and the things that they gave us, the parts of them that we begin to emulate, the parts of them that we've rejected, the parts of them that have made us grow and become who we are. And for that, Marty's always going to be alive. He'll always be alive with me. Because that was an incredible time. Those, when I was in my 20s through my 30s, and we had to separate for a while. I couldn't stay in that business, and he didn't want me to stay in that business. He was beginning to have his art career, and there was not a partnership there when that was going on. That was cool. We separated, and Marty went off and did his thing, and I went off and did my thing. And that one of the things I always noticed about people who work for us, and later on people who work for Marty, was they were better when they left. You didn't see people leave and all of a sudden they cratered, right? Because because they'd been around that, because they'd learned so much, they were better for it. And each one of the kids, you guys are great, and you're so important to me. And your dad lives on in you guys, and I'm so grateful to be here and to be a part of this. Thank you so much.
So Lou, stay right here for a minute. I'm going to ask everybody to come up, not to speak, but just come up for a minute. Cary, please come up. You please. The vetting. At Marty's wedding to Peggy at Wonderful Land was off the charts. I can say that. Marty, we love you.
Yeah.
We will see you at another time. You made us better people. You made us better human beings. We love you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
L'chaim.
Time.
Okay, yeah. Can I take the urn home for a week? Is it like
Yeah, it's like the world.
I think this is, Jay, this is kind of, I think this is like,
Who else? What other son of a bitch?
this is a Stanley Cup.
You have every year somebody gets it, put the name at the bottom.
Can I ask you a question? Can we pull that off? Can we pull that off? That would be incredible.